Now the father can't find his little optimistic son, so he calls out to him, and the little boy pops out of that huge pile of manure, says, "Yes, Dad." The father says, "What are you doing in there?" And the little boy says, "Well, with all this manure, I know there's got to be a pony in there somewhere." Anyway, that was my father's favorite joke. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a pony ourselves, and it's the American people. And we're going to do everything for them that we can. We just have to dig them out.
I wish I had started screen capping his faces earlier in the movie.
You sent over some really good ones.
I'm sure there's tons I missed because I didn't start until the last 40 minutes.
Oh, man. Just a delight to the senses. Like,
he did really have it down by the end, though. The face,
Yeah.
the Reagan smile.
At the end.
I keep watching this video of him with the old man filter on.
Yeah, it's so funny. God. I saw at a basketball game the other day, they were using a face filter on people in the audience. And I was looking down for a moment, and I looked up, and it was happening. And I was like, oh. Like it actually got me for a moment.
Yeah, they did that. I don't know if the Pacers started it, but their thing went viral where they were like it was a Lakers Pacers game, and the Lakers were losing, and they started doing like the crying face on Lakers fans and putting it on the jumbotron.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Are the Pacers the team that has the really creative jumbotron?
Not
There was some
really.
other basketball team that was like known for doing. I can't remember. They had really funny jumbotron prompts.
They had one a while ago that was like wave your Kroger card in the air for like a gift card or something, but it wasn't meant to be ironic or anything.
Yeah. I can't remember what.
I only like teams that have absolutely zero riz.
Of course.
So
man.
they got pretty lucky with the crying face one.
Oh man. Well, shall we start the show? Lots to cover today.
Well, Martha, why don't we start the show?
Yeah, we got to start the show because I have to watch either Underworld 3 or Hellraiser 3 tonight.
Why either one of those?
Well, because I watched the first two of both recently.
Oh, you got a busy man. Should we postpone the recording?
You said it like you were doing a ritual of some kind. I mean, I guess you kind of, it's like October 29th. And
I am.
But,
yeah. Kind of
I
am.
understand. Let's get into it. Well, welcome back to Boys Bible Study. We're just so excited. We're smiling ear to ear. Our jelly bean bowls are on the table and they're filled to the damn brim. And we hope that's the case for you listening at home because we're finally reviewing a brand new film called Reagan. And as always, I'm Ash here with my co-hosts
Scott
and Julian.
Oh, man. I mean, like, where to even start with this one? I guess, like, what I want to mention is that, for us...
the year was 1925. A magical little boy was born who we were monitoring from the moment of conception. For he was the promised one.
When I saw the sperm that was going to reach the egg, I thought... anyone but that one.
They said
for that is the sperm of a crusader.
We had a secret operative sperm inside the testicles of the crusader's father.
Well, the problem with communist sperm is they all try to fertilize the egg at once.
Yeah,
they're not very it's the business of life. Is not a collectivist game here. Okay, may the best sperm win. That's the American motto. But very exciting. This film has been viral in our specific social scene, like since the first mention of it dropped online. I can't even remember when exactly that was, but I think I just saw like a tweet about it, and I immediately texted probably like the two of you and also like our friends in Loose Meat and our friends Nathan and David from Loose Meat and like probably some other people because like this is just the movie we've been waiting for.
Yes.
More so than I would have guessed.
I'm actually kind of sad that I didn't see this in theaters.
I know. Yeah. Now, it would have been really fun. But yeah, it was, short story, like it was extremely entertaining to us and people with our sensibilities. I'm not going to go ahead and say that'll necessarily be the case for you listening, but we had a great time and we're so excited to tell you about it. So again, this is Reagan. This is a 2024 biographical drama film directed by Sean McNamara. And it is, of course, about
Dutch.
Number 40.
Reagan. Number 40.
The Gipper. A man of many names. Our favorite president ever of the United States. No, surprisingly not Trump. I'm talking about Ronald Reagan. Sean McNamara directed. We are familiar with him due to some like pretty crazy lore that, we've already spent an entire episode going over. I would recommend checking out our Eminon episode for some more info about the Paul family, of whom Sean McNamara is an associate. But Scott, anything to say about him?
For the Paul family, Jon Voight is also an associate, longtime friend of the fam. So not surprising to see him here. Sean also directed a movie that we covered within the past year, that airplane movie that I'm drawing a blank on, also with Dennis Quaid, which is a feature
A Wing
length.
and a Prayer.
Yes, On a Wing and a Prayer.
On a Wing and a Prayer.
And that is, of course, the feature-length movie about a 20-minute incident.
I forgot about that.
And also famously in the particular slice of letterbox that I pay attention to, he made the very popular movie, the BRATZ movie.
BRATZ, 2007.
Is that about the dolls?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like a live right, it's live action, right?
Yeah, it's live action. It's supposed to be like a very good teen movie. At least if you
Really?
believe, again, the slice of letterbox that I focus on.
Yeah. Yeah, he also directed in 2003, he directed the Even Stevens movie, the film adaptation of the very popular Disney series that, notably co-starred Shia LaBeouf in one of his first star-making roles.
Chomos.
I know. Sean started in that like teen movie space, and this is kind of, if I'm remembering correctly, like this is kind of the prerogative of the Paul family. Sean McNamara, how is he related to the Pauls? Do you remember this, Scott? I can't remember his exact. Is he married into them or an associate? I can't remember.
About Logan Paul?
No, there's all the. See, you weren't on this episode, Julian, but there's this insane lore of, it's like Stephen Paul and Christy Paul. There's this Hollywood family of directors, and Jon Voight is like a member of the family, and he's like the godfather of all of their children.
Whoa.
And they just have this like really strange, almost mafia like hold over a score of like B and C movies that were produced in like the 80s through 2020s.
And they produced Amazing Ape, remember? They like executive produced it.
Yes. Yeah, they had their
That's a
hands on
logo.
Amazing Ape. One of our favorite films we've ever watched.
How do they make money? Like, how do these people make? I understand like tax write-offs and stuff, but like that doesn't make you money,
Yeah.
Uh,
I really don't know.
It's not like it's not like you can fucking, fund Amazing Ape and you're not like making I guarantee you they did not make $1 off of that movie.
You don't think a lot of people have clicked on that on Tubi late at night and been like, okay. I think it's through sheer amount of movies. Cause like this stuff that they like, there's lots of Christmas movies and a bunch of
Reagan
Baby
probably
Genius
made a lot of money,
movies.
but- Yeah.
Yeah, Baby
Yeah, they
Geniuses
made all the
and
Baby
the Mystery
Geniuses movies.
of the Crown Jewels. Baby Geniuses
were
and
a
the
huge
Treasures
hit.
of Egypt. Baby Geniuses and the
What?
Space Baby.
These sound awesome.
Yeah,
we
Are you
going to
get into baby
these.
movies?
I should. That's a good idea.
That would be really fun.
Yeah.
So again, we Scott and I spoke extensively about the Pauls for a film we covered on Boys Bible Study last year. The film is called Eminon, and it was directed by Stuart Paul. Not the most successful of the Paul family, but one of the many. And it also stars him. It's just like this really strange artifact. So
This is from the 80s?
yeah, this
Yeah.
Eminon is it's from 87.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so the thing about Reagan is like, I just want to get this out up front. No, this detail is not important to the watching and enjoyment of Reagan, but I just want our listeners to understand that like you're not just seeing a weird conservative Christian film trying to like uplift the legacy of Ronald Reagan to contrast with these extremely woke times. You're also seeing like the weird like discharge of this like very, very prolific Hollywood family that just does
Yeah.
all this weird shit that is not connected to each other, which includes the Baby Geniuses movies.
It's weird when it like bleeds into the mainstream.
Yeah, I know. And this is a pretty, I mean, there's some mainstream names in this film, definitely on like the conservative Hollywood side, but you know, mainstream theatrical release. I just looked on Wikipedia. It actually did make back its budget. It grossed 30 million on a 25 million budget. So it was not a flop. But yeah, who else do we got in this movie that makes it a pretty mainstream, a star-studded affair?
You got
Other
Jon
than
Voight.
Jon Voight and
Uh,
Mr. President himself, played by Dennis Quaid. And
Dennis Quaid.
Matthew Lillard, isn't it, for like 20
Wait, I didn't
seconds?
clock him.
Not Matthew Lillard. Who's the guy from Entourage?
Oh, I'm just going to have to go back to the Wikipedia page.
I don't know any of their names.
I don't know any actors' names. Is it somebody Matthew?
I think so. Entourage cast. It is Kevin Dillon. Sorry.
Kevin Dillon. Yeah, he's
That's way
definitely.
off.
in this movie.
Kevin Dillon.
Yeah, Kevin Dillon is in it. Scott Stapp plays Frank Sinatra
Scott
for
Stapp.
Yes.
like 3 seconds. I don't know why they even bothered. Okay. Also, all right. So that was one of the reasons that I like reignited my interest in it. I was like, I don't want to fucking watch a 2.5 hour movie about Reagan when this first came out. Like, I don't want to be in some audience with a bunch of fucking like dipshits watching this movie, not being able to laugh. And then
Right.
like 3 weeks ago, I found out Scott Stapp plays Frank Sinatra in this.
Like, come on.
But he's only in it for like 3 seconds. But the weird thing is he playing Frank Sinatra, and as you point out, Ash, he's like waving his arms around and like dancing like a madman. And it's like, what the fuck? I would not even have known that was supposed to be Frank Sinatra if I had known, unless it had been told to me before.
Yeah, he doesn't
absolutely.
look like him. He doesn't sound like him. He's not moving or acting like him.
Yeah.
He's just singing a Frank Sinatra song, and in the credits it says he's playing Frank Sinatra, but there's nothing. It really is one of the weirdest cameos I've ever seen.
Yes.
First of all, because like Scott Stapp, if you don't know him by name, former lead singer of Creed, one of my first favorite bands of all time. I love that band. Yeah, he plays Frank Sinatra for 5 seconds, and you're just like, what? Like, it shows him, and you're like, who is that? What was that?
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
I'm going to use some AI Frank Sinatra covers of Creed songs.
Oh.
a
Now
good
we're getting
idea.
somewhere. Frank Sinatra doing My Own Prison would be amazing. Should have been dead on a Sunday morning.
Don't forget to do the crazy arm movements Frank Sinatra is known for.
Like somebody was just explaining to him, like he didn't watch the video he was supposed to, and his assistant was like, "Oh, well, it's kind of like this," and then they just didn't make him do another take because he's Scott Stapp.
He was like, he thought he was like a jazz singer, so he had to do like jazz hands or something. It's like, I'm pretty sure he was like very cool and collected and like masculine. I haven't, to be honest, I haven't clocked a lot of hours watching live videos of Frank Sinatra, because I'm not 75 years old, but amazing singer. But yeah, so Reagan, it has these mainstream people. Dennis Quaid has definitely recently carved a niche for himself in the conservative aspect of Hollywood, but like definitely a former A-lister, I think I would describe him as.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Jon Voight was also at the same time in theaters with a very large role in Megalopolis.
Yes.
Not the highest earning film of the year, but won by Francis Ford Coppola with some of the biggest A-list stars in it.
And also I don't know necessarily in practice, but seems to, a very extremely anti-Trump movie.
Megalopolis, yes.
Yes. I was going to say anti-conservative. It was without a doubt an anti-Trump movie.
Right.
So he's in that, but also being like a very vocal Trump supporter and in Reagan, doing every fucking moronic conservative's dream of playing an evil Russian guy. Seems to be a weird thing that they all do. Oh, and Robert Davi is in this movie also.
Yes, I was going to
I just
say.
remembered.
Director of My Son Hunter.
I forgot about that.
Me too.
Oh my
I
God.
totally forgot about that. We haven't watched that one.
What are these people going to do if Trump wins again? Like, they're going to not have anything to fucking talk about.
They're going to become the biggest stars in the world once again.
Can you imagine the fucking
Robert
next
Davi is
Avengers movie is Robert Davi and Jon Voight as like fucking... It's going to be Eric and Donald Jr. They're going to be playing Eric and Donald Jr. as superheroes.
they're digitally
protecting
de-aged,
crypto.
playing Eric and Donald Jr.
And of course, though, there's the biggest name in this movie, Kevin Sorbo as Reverend Ben
Oh, of
Cleaver.
course.
Yes.
He's not even listed on the Wikipedia page.
The fucking thing about this
yes, he
movie
is, sorry.
that,
Yeah, he
that
is.
pisses me off, even though I love this movie, is that all these names that feel like they were created and it was like a cast that was created in a lab to make me want to watch this movie. It's all like bait and switch. These guys like Kevin Sorbo, fucking Scott Stapp, they only show up for like 2 seconds in the whole movie.
Yep.
Robert Davi, I don't think has one. I think Robert Davi has one line in this whole movie.
I know. Yeah. It's hey, it's an ensemble cast. Honestly, probably the film from recently that this film reminded me the most of is, of course, the enduring classic, the 2017 film Gotti.
Oh yeah.
Because there were just so many scenes. The reason I compare it to Gotti is because like you would walk into a room or maybe it was 2018 Gotti. You'd walk into a room and someone would be sitting there and it'd be like Tip O'Neill. Like there'd be a subtitle that said Tip O'Neill, and then there'd be one scene with Tip O'Neill, and then you basically wouldn't see him again.
Yeah.
And sometimes the actors looked like their counterparts. Other times, again, like Scott Stapp as Frank Sinatra, it was like, who is this man? Why is he here?
The guy playing George H.W. Bush looked nothing like him. And also, I don't think he had any lines. But he still
said, like,
got the lower third.
one
Yeah.
sentence.
It was so fucking stupid, dude.
So
what was the
stupid.
point of that? Margaret Thatcher. I was not watching the screen when Margaret Thatcher came on, and I thought he was talking to like a Swedish queen or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was she even talking about? She said something that was like,
I think she was giving him advice on like how to deal with the Soviets, or she was like saying like, oh, and I can't believe you embarrassed Gorbachev like that after talking to, like she said some shit like commenting on his foreign policy toward Gorbachev.
It was really funny because in that scene he was like reassuring her that America was going to be okay in the Cold War because they were going to buy all of their oil from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Which was just so funny how they were just like, just blatantly being like, yeah, this decision is going to fuck us for the next like 40 years, by the way. But it's like painted as like, oh, the genius Reagan.
Yeah.
There were a couple moments like that. In this
They
movie.
even tried to paint him as a genius with the Iran-Contra affair. They made it so fast, and we're like, oh,
I thought they weren't going to cover it.
Yeah, I'm
know,
shocked
it's
that
so
they did,
funny.
honestly. We're skipping past the AIDS crisis like they did. They probably spent more time with him and his jellybeans than they did with the totality of Iran-Contra and the AIDS crisis.
Well, much to say about Reagan. Let's get into it. You know, we wanted to make sure our gentle listeners, you know, the young conservatives of America who are going to, you know, grow up and make this country what it is, you know, all of you who are the target audience of the Reagan film, we wanted to make sure you had the full background. But let's get into Reagan. Let's try to define the angle this movie takes with regards to the life of Reagan, the things it chooses to focus on or not focus on, and just like all of the insane tonal decisions that it made. Let's get into it. Mr. Boy's Bible Study, tear down this movie.
Well, first of all, loved the titles. Sean McNamara had his directed by Sean McNamara over a nuclear explosion, which was very cool.
Very daring.
Which was immediately followed by the title. Yes, very daring.
Very daring, as if to say that the movie that he is making is going to be like civilization ending and and is like the worst case scenario that everyone is working toward preventing. Very daring of you to categorize your movie visually in that way.
So the framing device of this movie, we're listening to the tale of Ronald Reagan's life,
Right.
as told by an old KGB officer or somebody who worked in the Kremlin during the Cold War.
Some kind of Russian spy.
Some kind of Russian spy, yeah. It doesn't matter what they did or who they are or anything. They just have a Russian accent, and therefore you know that they were bad guys.
Right.
This is, so a younger Russian guy shows up at Jon Voight's apartment in present day Russia and is asking him to like tell the story of what happened with Reagan and why the Soviet Union collapsed. I don't think it's ever explained why he's doing this. He just goes there and asks him the story, and what he has done is he's walked into the trap of a Reagan stan. Because he's about to sit for fucking 9 hours and listen to this weird Russian guy who's like glazing Reagan so hard he's about to cream.
Yeah. He is what teen stan culture would refer to as an anti. That is someone who is like such a well-versed and well-researched hater that they may as well be constantly doing promo
Yes.
for them.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is like the point of the movie, but the grating bad Russian accent narration, which does not let up, it lasts for the entire movie, is just so much about how like every single thing Reagan did is just like, we were hoping he wouldn't do that.
Also, that the Russians were plotting to have him assassinated for the entirety of his life, ever since he was born. There seems to be this like vibe that they had been like monitoring him since he was a child because they knew that he was like the promised one.
Right.
They call him the Crusader, which never happened. None of this shit happened. None of the stuff in this movie happened. I know that it's like well documented in history books and stuff, but I mean, if people are going to make shit up about like Haitian immigrants and just be like, well, the point is that it could have been true.
Right.
I'm going to say none of this shit ever happened.
Yes.
I don't care that it happened. It didn't happen.
I completely agree.
True. Was Reagan or was Reagan not president?
This could have been false.
Was Reagan president?
I don't think
or
so.
Not? Oh.
No.
Oh, never
At this
mind.
point, after watching this movie, I am starting to think he was never the president because I didn't really think about this while watching, but I'm starting to agree with Julian. It's like it doesn't matter if an individual event in this film, like, yeah, he said this same quote in a debate.
Yeah.
There's no way anything went down the way it did in this movie. It's just so surreal and like anti-human, and it's like
he like walks into a room, and I mean, this is what people think Trump is like, and then you hear the stories of what Trump is actually like, and they're like, yeah, he's like looking at McDonald's, like on like the McDonald's app while you're trying to brief him on like potential like nuclear war shit. But first off, Reagan was senile since like 1950, and they like portray him as this guy who goes into these like meetings at the White House, and they're like, everyone around him has just been like, we don't know why our plan against the Soviets isn't working. We just keep letting them get more nuclear weapons. And he'll just be like, you're telling me you're letting our enemies have more nuclear weapons, and you don't see why that's a bad thing.
And everybody's like,
fuck, he's right. Fuck, I hate when he's right.
Yeah, it does the thing that I love when biographical or movies about history do, where they condense like 3 happenings to one seated conversation, where someone's like, all of the air traffic controllers are going on strike, and he's like, well, they forfeited their jobs. And then someone else turns to him and is like, we decided to give the Soviets more nukes. And he was like, I don't think you should do that. And that's just like what an average, lunchtime conversation is like.
Yeah. It's funny. Also, it's funny that like this whole movie, they're portraying communist Russia, like anyone involved in communist Russia, like anybody who's like remotely interested in communism in the United States is a pawn of the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
They mentioned that about like some Hollywood union leader.
Yeah.
And they occasionally hint at it with like his Hollywood friends who are like, the working class should rise up and like overthrow the system that's oppressing them. And he's like, now, why would you think that's a good idea? Why don't you tell me more about that? But he's like, anytime there's somebody who is like anti-Reagan in the movie, they're like, they were being controlled by the Soviets.
Yeah.
But they say this guy who is an actor without a fucking single cell of a brain in between his ears, who like only stayed relevant because he was so virulently anti-communist, like wouldn't be like a puppet for, American capitalists to run for office is like so insane.
Well,
Yeah,
that's part of the funny thing.
I know that's
too,
not
just
the point of the movie, but it's still just like
how they're showing it. Even like we know the Russians are the bad guys, and the point is the spy is trying to infiltrate Hollywood to give information back to Russia. But then he is basically doing that for the U.S. He's giving information from Hollywood back to the U.S.
Right.
So
yeah,
like
but they even say he was an FBI informant.
Yeah.
And they're acting like he was like, he's a good guy because he's American, and he was like acting on his own the whole time.
Yes.
There's even a part where he's like not even running for politics. He's just reading like books about geopolitical whatever. And he's just like, I could, this is why America should do this. And his wife is like, honey, you should run for politics one of these days. You know so much.
He's probably reading like the equivalent of airport books, like the new Glenn Beck book or shit like that.
It's like, his wife says it to him with the tone of me saying to one of my friends, like, yeah, I mean, if you bar back for a year, like you could probably bartend after that. But yeah, I agree. Well, I love that double standard that, when a communist, when someone from the Soviet Union when they're working on American soil to do anti-American things, it's because they're like brainwashed and controlled. You know, when Reagan does that, no, he decided he wanted to do that.
He's the one telling the
he's an
rest of America
individualist.
what to do. Yeah.
Yeah, which is like, of course, you know, it's all like, you know, these sort of nebulous like team conflicts, but it's just funny the way they portray him.
Yeah, it's basically how people think of Trump right now. Like, yeah, he just decided he was going to be Catholic this week on his own accord.
Trump did?
Right.
Yeah, no, he's not
Catholic
actually,
now?
but you're telling me he's like doing this really niche appealing on truth.
Yeah,
right.
he's been. It was actually on Twitter.
I forgot.
He's been posting on Twitter a little bit, but he just did a tweet today that was like, to all the Coptic Christians of the United States, like I support you, and like I want your support, blah blah. And like someone on Twitter pointed out that like he's clearly doing it because his campaign is running the numbers and being like, if we get like 4,000 more votes in Michigan, then we could like swing it or whatever, you know? So he's like doing like somewhat niche, like religious alignment tweeting.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting strategy. They're trying to grab, it's smart, I guess. They're just trying to grab like a couple thousand at a time in different like, but yeah, again, Trump has a force of charisma that, you know, is undeniable, and it's why a lot of people are drawn to him. So yeah, people have a tendency to view him as an individual actor, even when he's clearly, you know, doing the bidding of this like much larger movement or political group that has been acting, you know, before he was ever a political actor.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how this movie portrays Reagan, and it's all at the expense of the Soviets, of course.
I thought it was also funny how clearly, like how open they were with his like sad career as an actor. It's not like sad. He was a successful actor. He's the president of the like fucking Hollywood Union
SAG.
or whatever. Yeah, of SAG. And but like they really showcase his like dark moments of like being a Vegas nightclub performer and like doing all these shitty commercials for random products. And I don't know, it's just very bizarre. I think they were really trying to draw like parallels to Trump, who has like, you know, all kinds of fucking horrible products and like shitty, like low class aspects of his personality and history. But then being like, oh, well, like this was just a dark time in his life before he realized he was like going to be a leader versus like, you know, why would you vote for a guy who's fucking doing like commercials for like cigarettes?
Yeah,
like, why
for
would you say like,
appliances.
oh, that guy is smarter than any other person who's like a career politician?
Well, to that point, I wrote in my notes to the extent that, well, first of all, I think it's interesting that you're right. They're trying to sell this movie to contemporary audiences by drawing parallels to Trump. I also wrote in my notes like they're really jamming in the fact that being an actor is like being a worker.
Yeah,
like he's like a blue collar working man. Because
yeah,
like, well, I just clocked into the cigarette commercial, and you know,
unless you like communism, then you are not a working class person. You're a spy.
Yeah, you're a spy, or you're like so, you know, leftist that you've become like an elite. You know, you're an effete, like, you know, elitist intellectual who's been like, you know, swayed by this, but being an actor, being an actor or being in the Hollywood machine in this movie is definitely not portrayed as being elitist. It's portrayed as legitimately. It's like, like clocking in to work at a ranch or like work in a factory or something.
They make dreams. It's the dream factory.
Yeah. Sometimes it is a factory. Sometimes it is a ranch.
I mean, that is all technically true. But also thought that was, you know, very flattering to all the people involved in this film who, you know, are like Jon Voight, salt of the earth Republican, clocking into the communist factory that day to play a digitally de-aged Kremlin, you know.
The digital
Kremlin
de-aging
actor.
was so good in this movie.
It was amazing. Yeah, let's talk about I wanted to bring that up, and I also wanted to bring up like Dennis Quaid's face as Reagan, because
Yeah.
I just the way they portrayed the human face in this film, I think was remarkable.
It was captivating.
Yes,
It
was.
looks worse. What was crazy, I was talking to my girlfriend watching this, and I said it looks worse than the splitting image puppet that they use in the Genesis music video. And then they actually showed that in the video.
Oh,
Or
right.
in the movie. They showed the music video in the movie.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like less bizarre to see that character than it is to see fucking Dennis Quaid like made to look like Reagan, then de-aged.
Yeah.
Yes. They gave him, what did they even do to him? Is it like prosthetics?
I don't know. They like put prosthetics on his face and then like pulled his face back with a bunch of safety pins. He looks positively reptilian. For
Did you ever see
majority
that
of the
behind
movie.
the scenes of Paul Rubens, R.I.P., in the most recent Pee Wee movie, that like new Netflix one? That was actually pretty funny.
No.
It's literally like that, like, because he's supposed to look like a weirdly ageless boy in those movies. He's like you can see the clamps like behind his head and the behind the scenes like pulling his face taut.
Wow.
So maybe
so funny.
they might have done that with Dennis Quaid, something like that.
They did that, but they also just had like, I mean, it didn't look like they were permanent procedures, but it looked like every day they injected so much Botox in his like chin and cheeks that he looked like a ventriloquist dummy. And then they pulled his face back. And I think it was an effect for the movie. I think it was a combination of practical effects and digital de-aging, which was like very, very uncanny. And, it kind of reminded me, I just realized this, it kind of reminded me of Michael Douglas playing Liberace in Behind the Candelabra. Similar voice, face, effect, everything as Dennis Quaid playing Ronald Reagan in this movie. He's like a Liberace type figure.
I wish my brother George was here.
His face kind of
take
looked like
that-
a friendly jigsaw.
Oh, yeah.
Benevolent Jigsaw.
That'd be so funny. We should make the Jigsaw Reagan biopic where it's like he was a vengeful psychopath, but if you examine his actual crimes, he was trying to teach people lessons early on before he pivoted to politics.
Do you want to play a game, Mr. Gorbachev?
Do the positive take on Darth Vader's life. People would love that.
He got shit done.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He's a go-getter. Yeah, so that is, that's happening, and we see that a lot in the film. Late last night, or maybe it was today, I can't remember, Julian sent us a ream of 10 photos you had taken of the screen of just like Dennis Quaid's face in different positions. And
He kept doing this. Every time he said a smug thing as Reagan, which is like, you could, if you had a nickel for every time he says some fucking smug one-liner in this that like shuts everybody up, you'd be a very rich person by the end of it. But every time he did one of these fucking smug little comebacks or quips or whatever, he would do this like Tim Heidecker face. He like tilts his like chin all the way down to his like chest and is like smiling up at you. So fucking bizarre.
yeah, that combined with, so, we're seeing that for a lot of the film. His face is like it's very like, it's like low poly. Like it's like, it's very smooth, but very rough. And then that combined with the fact that they had Jon Voight spend most of the movie. His character was narrating in the present day, and then to depict him in the past, he was constantly digitally de-aged to the point where his face was like glowing.
Yeah.
And it really looked like a Snapchat filter. It may
he
as
was-
well have been.
He was glammed up. Or what do they call that? He had like I forget the name of the app. But that would like make you look completely smooth and shiny.
Oh yeah, I mean it's not like Facetune.
He was also he was like face-tuned.
Yeah.
And he had like a weird like giant suit, like David Byrne style suit that he would wear when he was younger, but when he's older, he's like lost weight from it made no fucking sense.
Right. And he was always saying things, I must emphasize the entire film, he was saying things like, about Reagan. He was controversial governor. Just nonstop. Oh yeah, I also wrote in my notes, Dennis Quaid as Reagan looks like Bradley Cooper as the Elephant Man, which is also kind of true. So, it just is a very unfortunate facial morph. I was very surprised by the lengths this movie went to make some people look recognizable, and the lengths to which they seemingly avoided doing that for other people. It was completely arbitrary how anyone spent their time designing this film.
How should we talk about the plot? 'Cause so much of it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's like it does and it doesn't.
Jump around some moments.
We should probably jump around. I don't know. I think it might be useful to sort of outline the general arc of it, because it is kind of funny the way they structure it. What highlights from his life they use.
Well, it's so cheap because you have this narration thing that makes it with the type of narration setup it is, this could be like an anthology. So they can really just jump around anywhere in time they want to, as long as the narrator is there to guide you, and they kind of do.
Yeah.
So they get into they talk about infiltrating Hollywood and go into his early acting life, but then once he sees the potential for Reagan with his how vehemently anti-communist he is, he starts doing research on Reagan, and then we get his whole life, the whole background of his life. We see him as a kid and as a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And as a kid, he is a very good Christian boy. He knows the Bible front to back and can recite any verse. Also, his parents lodged people of color when the football team needed a place to stay, which I said never happened. And I looked it up later, and apparently that was true. I'm willing to concede that one point, but nothing else in this movie happened.
On that note, I actually I read last night after watching this movie, I read the full Wikipedia pages for Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan, and then I got curious and I read the full Wikipedia pages for Donald Trump and Melania Trump.
Yeah.
I think that this movie I still stand by agreeing with you that none of it ever happened, but actually it really nails the sentence long descriptions of events in history from Wikipedia directly.
I would imagine this movie should have been adapted from the Wikipedia article.
I kind of think
at the
it
beginning.
was.
Yeah, based on the Wikipedia article, Ronald Reagan, American politician.
I kind of think it was. So again, it's yes, these events they happened. It's like if someone did a police sketch of you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They might say for me oh yeah, he has brown hair, brown eyes, brown eyebrows or whatever, and you put it together and it's all the pieces are there, but it's not a drawing of me. Really, it's that was reading the Wikipedia article of Reagan after watching this film. I'm gonna pitch. Let's just pick a couple aspects of his life that are sort of into bigger scenes, and let's sort of talk about how they handled it.
Yeah. Should we start with the jelly beans? His love for jelly beans was.
Let's mention the jelly bean thing. I was gonna say let's start with let's start with jelly beans. Then I kind of want to take it sort of chronologically through how the movie portrayed it.
The jelly beans are in every scene.
Yeah.
There's a part where he says you can... Okay, this was fucking insane. Because everything he does, it's like that fucking Han Solo movie where they were oh, we have to explain every little thing about this person, and it all has to be significant in their life.
It's all connected. The thesis of someone's life is always being enacted by them.
Yeah, nothing can be... No part of you can just be some random quirk. His love for jelly beans... He's oh, I switched to jelly beans to help me quit smoking. Yeah. But there's a point where he gets a new cabinet member played by Xander Berkeley, who I was happy to see because I was a big 24 fan growing up.
Yeah.
He offers him some jelly beans, and Xander Berkeley picks out jelly, oh, thank you. He take some jelly beans out, and Ronald Reagan is like, you can tell a lot about a man's character from the way he picks jelly beans out of a jar. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? And he says, if a person takes all of the same color as this man just did, that means that they're a like focused, determined person. No, it means they have fucking horrible OCD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing to do as an adult.
Yes. When somebody offers you fucking offers you a bunch of jelly
and
beans.
they're holding the bowl to you, you like spend 45 seconds like picking out like 5 green jelly beans.
Also, bro, you just lost any sort of leverage you had going into this meeting. They always say if you walk into a meeting and they offer you jelly beans, do not take the jelly beans. It shows weakness.
They always say that?
Well, they say that about food. If they offer you, if there's food in a meeting room, don't take it.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I thought that was so stupid. Again, yeah, the jelly beans couldn't just be like, here's some lovable, quirky shit that Reagan liked to do. It was like, no, the jelly beans were an integral part. They were how he tested people.
Yes.
Like, no.
It's this fantasy that it like feeds into the fantasy that the president does everything.
Yes.
Like he's even like testing members of his cabinet through the jelly bean test. We have to take our new Secretary of State to the fucking White House so he can do the jelly bean test. As if they're not like handpicked by the Heritage Foundation and just like show up one day and like tell you what to do when you're the president.
Yeah.
Let's go through some of the not chronological in his life, but sort of the order the movie portrayed it. A big thing about this film was the assassination.
Yes.
It was the first thing they showed of all of Reagan's life. And they also like basically did that whole scene again. Like they like spent the whole like 10 minutes of the movie assassinating him. Then they just did the exact same thing again later.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very tedious.
It was also really funny that they had to be like, the guy was like, so the guy who shot him, was he a Russian spy? And Jon Voight's like, no, but, we wanted to assassinate him.
But we would have.
Yeah. He's like, that is not to say we didn't have plans.
And it's all like
so stupid.
It's all like them setting up a cardboard box with a stick under it and a jelly bean. And Reagan's like, oh, I'll come back for that later. And then like Nancy cleans it up and then they never actually get him. And they're like, drat. They made John Hinckley like a hot twink in this movie.
I didn't even
Is that
catch
what
him.
he looked like?
I didn't catch him.
He looked like a Riverdale, not like a hunky Riverdale cast member, but like a twinky, shiny like Riverdale cast member. I'm gonna look up young John Hinckley right now.
I loved how they tied
My rapper
him
name.
getting shot and John Paul II getting shot
Oh, that was awesome.
together, because that was
And
a
how
pivotal
they-
moment in this
Yeah.
film as well, when John Paul II gets shot, and apparently that has
They
like
bonded over it while they were in the
repercussions.
hospital. They ended up in beds right next to each other at the hospital.
Yeah, very cute. Well,
with a bedpan full of jelly beans.
well, they were two Catholics, right?
Yeah, was Ronald
Yeah.
Reagan
No,
Catholic?
hold on a second. Was he Catholic?
I don't think so.
I don't know.
But
I
there
know
was
he
like
had Manly P. Hall and Jerry Falwell around his cabinet a lot.
Reagan definitely was not Catholic. We need to cut that.
Yeah.
But like, no, what they said in the movie, and this is the Russians admitting that they made like a huge mistake, because I believe the Russians in this film take credit for trying to assassinate Pope John
which
Paul.
is not true. Also,
I don't know. I didn't look it up.
I looked it up.
Okay. But they were like, but what we didn't know is that we would unleash the wrath of the Catholic Church. And then the Catholic Church, they then felt a kinship with Reagan,
Yes,
according to this movie. Because
So-
both were shot, both were victims of, Russian hatred. So then Catholics felt an affinity for Reagan, even though he himself was not Catholic.
So it's never been confirmed who the guy who shot John Paul II was working for. but he was a hired assassin who was either hired by the Soviet Union or by Iran. But this guy was, I looked it up, he was a member of the Grey Wolves, which are an ultra right-wing Turkish like paramilitary organization who were allies with the U.S. during the Cold War.
Sure.
He hated leftists, hated communists, even though this guy personally claimed he had no political beliefs. But
so it's unlikely that the Soviets would hire this person.
I mean, I guess they could have if he truly was just like, whoever wants to pay for me. But it's just really funny that they leave out the fact that this guy was like basically backed by the U.S.
Yeah,
like part of an organization that
was
hated communism and was backed by the U.S. And they're like, the Soviets did it. It reminded me of the fucking January 6th when like they were saying that all the protesters were Antifa.
Oh yeah, they must have been Antifa.
Right, yeah.
Like they're all so proud to like break in and be like, "We did it!" And then the media's like, "These Antifa thugs like disgraced Congress." Yeah, similar sort of situation here.
Oh yeah, Scott, I want to go back to you talking about Jerry Falwell and Manly P. Hall, who unfortunately does not make an appearance in this movie.
I was so disappointed we didn't get a depiction
Neither
of
of
Manly
them
P.
did,
Hall
right?
in this film.
We didn't get Jerry Falwell either, right?
No, we didn't.
Lame.
They sort of glossed over like the later years of Reagan. It feels like he gets reelected in 1984, and then he's like, they're basically like, by 1985, I have accomplished everything I set out to do. And they just like skip over most of his second term and just do he has Alzheimer's now.
Right.
Now we can admit that he has Alzheimer's.
Well, and
Now
I
we
thought
can
that was
admit-
cool that he like acted the way he acted the entire movie was like he was gearing up for Alzheimer's.
He was Alzheimer's maxing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good trick. You can ease the disappointment of your loved ones when you eventually get diagnosed with Alzheimer's by acting senile for a large
really
part of your
forgetful.
life.
Like,
It
what
was
was the
funny
thing
how
Nancy
they-
said with at some point he was in his debate for like his running for his second term, and Nancy's like, instead of cramming his head with useless numbers, why don't you let Ronnie be Ronnie? And it's like,
Yes.
that seemed like a Trump thing too. That seemed like very much like, what did
Never
you need
happens.
facts for? Just let him be himself and everything.
Yeah,
will
let him
turn out.
vibe out.
Exactly.
Gentlemen, instead of cramming his head with useless numbers, why don't you let Ronnie be Ronnie? Okay?
I mean, she's got a point. I do find it to be very grating on either side of the political spectrum to be like, I'm just going to info dump and you're going to like believe what I say, especially in a debate. I feel like Trump has sort of like cracked the code of like, you really don't have to say anything of
It's not what
substance.
people are listening for.
You just have to have the right vibe.
So you think that's a good thing?
yeah.
There are no policies in debates now.
I don't.
It is pretty boring.
I can neither confirm nor deny whether it is a good thing or not, but I will say I watched basically the same amount of debates in the past 8 years as I did my entire life before, which was 0.
Sure. So speaking of like, maybe one of the next things we could talk about is just Nancy Reagan in general, because the other thing is not only did the Reagans consult with Manly P. Hall, who I've gone on the record many times in saying I'm a big fan of, have many of his books on my bookshelf. I think he's probably a great advisor to the president. But Nancy also had this other astrologer. I learned about this on Wikipedia named Joan Quigley, who was actually like her main astrologer. And that's the one who there's claims that like people go as far as to say that like Joan Quigley like made decisions about like when, Reagan would appear at certain things or whatever. I don't know how true that is, but that's like a very popular rumor about Nancy Reagan. One thing that does seem to be true, according to my research last night, reading the whole Wikipedia page for Nancy Reagan, she did more so than other first ladies seem to have a very active role in managing the day-to-day, livelihood of her husband. She was a very close advisor to Ronald with terms of like his schedule, his priorities, how he would dress, which they talk about in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, she made the clutch decision to not have him wear an overcoat when he like met Gorbachev for the first time. And then Jon Voight, digitally de-aged, says like, it was a disaster. He looked better than Gorbachev.
As if that was a difficult thing to pull off.
Yeah, right.
Here we go.
Oh no. Coat off.
It's below freezing out there.
The whole world is watching this meeting, George. He needs to look his best, and that overcoat is not working.
Well, you guys are in charge of policy, but even the leader of the free world has a boss, and she's in charge of presentation.
Before the summit had begun, we found ourselves already at a disadvantage, as the president looked better than the general secretary.
But that was all Nancy. You know, Nancy is she's shown in this movie that, you know, she had a bunch of influence over the day-to-day mundane but important aspects of
She stopped him from riding horses.
Yeah, saved his life. I did not know that he was married twice. Also,
Me
Nancy
either.
Reagan
I
is his
didn't
second
realize
wife. Yeah,
Me either. That was funny with his first wife. One of the moments of showing the stress and sadness in his life was him watching the kids by himself. It's pretty funny.
yeah. Ronald, Nancy. I mean, she wasn't that impactful in this movie. It would always felt like they definitely made her out to be like this grounding force, but it wasn't until the debate where she said, "Let Ronnie be Ronnie," and he said the magic joke that won him 500 electoral votes.
Yeah.
When everybody had the election the day later, and they were all like, "I'm voting for the guy who said the joke last night."
Right.
Literally, it was like a comedy skit of like the funniest joke ever told, and it changed the world.
Mr. Truitt, your question to President Reagan.
Mr. President, I want to raise an issue that I think has been lurking out there for 2 or 3 weeks and cast it specifically in national security terms. You already are the oldest president in history, and some of your staff say that you were tired after your most recent encounter with Mr. Mondale. I recall yet that President Kennedy had to go for days on end with very little sleep during the Cuba Missile Crisis. Is there any doubt in your mind that you would be able to function in such circumstances?
Not at all, Mr. Truitt. And I want you to know that also, I will not make age an issue in this campaign. I will not, for political purposes, exploit my opponent's youth and inexperience.
And with that one thrust of wit, he turned the tide.
But I feel like her biggest action in this movie was when she told him to like address the Iran-Contra scandal. She was like, "You have to stop ignoring this. You have to like go." She was always just like, "Let Ronnie cook. Ronnie, you have to cook. You have to go out there and do your Ronnie magic." And it changed. She was right every time. She let Ronnie be Ronnie. He said the joke that made everybody laugh and vote for him. And then she told him to talk about the Iran-Contra scandal. And we got the awesome quote that I can't believe they included in this movie of where he's like, "You know, a week ago I told you all I never did the Iran-Contra scandal. And now I'm here telling you that I did do the Iran-Contra scandal, but in my heart, I believe I did not do the Iran-Contra scandal."
And then followed by Jon Voight saying, "It was incredible. A man apologizing for his mistakes. It made him very strong." Like everything he does is just so perfect.
It was
the
honestly,
Soviets just love it.
A few months ago, I told the American people that I did not trade arms for hostages. My heart and my best intentions still tell me that's true. But the facts and the evidence tell me it is not. Now, what should happen when you make a mistake is this. You take your knocks. You put things in perspective. You pull your energies together. You make changes. And you go forward.
Americans, you do them wrong, you'll pay for it. You look them in the eye, admit you made a mistake, they forgive you every time.
They made it the equivalent of him killing the goldfish. Remember, he had to watch the kid's goldfish, and then the goldfish died. And they're like, oh, yeah, the goldfish died. You didn't take care of it right. Let's move along now.
Which is true.
And
it's a true story also.
So funny. He just had to feed the goldfish twice a day. That's it. And he didn't do it. And so he was like, no, I have to stop and write a letter first. And Nancy's like, that's Ronnie. That's gotta let him cook, as you say. And they made it seem like he was so good for that. And it's like, you let the kid's goldfish die.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you made your fucking like page write a letter.
Did y'all wait through the credits to see that letter at the end?
I didn't see it.
They showed way buried in the credits. The kid wrote a letter back absolving him of any injustice involving the goldfish.
The Teflon president.
Yeah.
Teflon Ron.
Like he was
that
like,
was the funniest
goldfish
thing
die all the time. You did nothing wrong.
That was the fucking funniest thing when he's like getting Alzheimer's and he looks at the fishbowl and he's just like, this means something to me.
Well, so we talked about Nancy a little bit. When Nancy and Ronald met, that was portrayed as very cute. There was just like, it was cute. It was like, it was like a woman going into the pharmacy to get some tissues, and she run the kindly pharmacist. Like it was portrayed again as this very like sort of cute, like bumbling working class, like love at first sight relationship. But it was like, oh dear, I'm in this pickle. Like I've been accused of being a communist sympathizer. Can you get my name off the list as the president of the Screen Actors Guild? And it's like, okay, like
that's so funny that it's like they like use that time in Hollywood, a very dark time in Hollywood, to be like, this is why he should be president, because he got us through that time.
Right.
But then they also use the example of his future wife being like falsely accused of being a communist by the same system that he was like the face of, one of the faces of, that would have like ruined her career had she not come to him soaking wet and he was just like, yeah, I'll take your name off the list. Sure thing.
Right.
Like, I don't know, the like cognitive dissonance of like, oh, I'm sorry you got caught up in this wacky system that ruins people's lives by just like somebody doesn't like you, calls you a communist.
Could be,
yeah.
Right. She's like, oh, honey, oh, Adolf, my name's on this list to get sent to the concentration camp. Oh, that's okay. Well, that's okay, Ava. I'll take your name off there.
Mistakes happen all the time. Yeah, not like, think about the system. Yeah, that was just
and that's in the same breath he's asking her out to dinner too.
Yeah, the movie obviously basically portrays, the what I guess that would be considered like McCarthyism, the Red Scare as a necessary evil, not even really that evil, just like a necessary thing that had to happen in American pop culture. I mean, I guess it looks good if you're, Reagan. He was never accused of being a communist, and in fact, he was very passionate about rooting it out, and it was part of his, seemingly part of his priorities as like the SAG president. But it did go into this plot, which I never knew about. I guess they're allegedly, I don't know if this is true or not, there was this communist plot at the time to infiltrate all American labor unions and try to organize them all together to be one political bloc. That's what this movie accuses Herb Sorrell Herb Sorrell of doing.
That'd be awesome.
He was allegedly, according to this movie, an FBI informant. No, it wouldn't be awesome. That would be like a fucking red birthmark is going to appear on your forehead the more you say that. That would be called communism, my friend.
Oh, fuck. Really? Shit. I'm so sorry.
Oh, man. Yeah. Ignore the fact that everyone already is united in a shared sort of social economic religion.
Called the everything app.
If that were to change, that would be doing a communism.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, don't do it.
I like the one we're in right now.
Yeah, I like our religion.
The thing is like because in communism you go to the store and there's only like one chip you can buy.
Right. And in Soviet Russia, the store goes to you.
And in capitalist America, you drive 25 minutes to the store and there's 40 flavors of chip and but only one of them tastes good.
Only one of them doesn't have poison in it.
Yeah. And then the store takes the other 39 flavors at the end of the month and throws them in the dumpster and pours bleach on them.
Yeah. Right. So for that reason, I'm really glad that Reagan did not let the nasty Herb Sorrell to merge SAG with the other labor unions to create this organizing, political bloc that would have hopefully, I guess, in their mind, merge into a communist political party that would have
sucked.
The United States. Yeah, I guess so.
Close
one. The communists seemed like they were having fun. They were
I would
always
hate to have one political party. Thankfully, now we have two.
I guess.
And one of them, everyone's just going and saying that they're all. Never mind. Forget it. I can't formulate thoughts right now.
No, me too. I was gonna say. We have two. They basically feel the exact same way about like the 5 most arguably major positions.
Yeah.
But we're supposed to get really, really bent out of shape about, some of the other ones.
Yeah.
Like they support Israel 100%. Like that's just like, that's a given. That doesn't matter what side you're on.
Yeah.
So if you possibly have somewhat of an objection to that, even if it's not like a full blown one, even if it's just like a minor one, you are not represented. Your voice is not represented in the system.
That's the beauty of our democracy.
Right.
Now imagine you're in communist Russia.
Oh.
You don't even get to throw away your vote.
No. You had to save it to throw it in the fireplace because, they didn't have a lot of. Well, anyways. What's some other just like funny moments from Reagan's life that we could talk about? I liked when he was a sexy lifeguard.
That was really funny.
Oh, yeah.
That was funny.
It was, God, everything. Again, like the fucking jellybeans.
Right.
They're like, he's a goof. He's a goof. He's saving people who aren't even drowning. And then later on, he's like, when I was a lifeguard, people thought I was I thought I was too eager, but that was because I knew the currents of the lake.
Right.
I knew when people were getting near the secret undertows and they were going to get pulled out and I'd pull them out before they could. They make him like
get in trouble.
Like he's fucking Aquaman or something.
He could see it coming before it happened. He learned how to read the currents.
And here I thought I married an actor. Well, you can always talk to Dick Nixon, President Kennedy, or any of your political friends. But why is it that my husband seems to know what's going to happen before they do?
Well, I was a lifeguard at a public swimming hole on a river. And I studied that river. And I learned how to read the currents. Not just the ones on the surface, but also the ones that were deep underneath the water, flowing way under. And I got good at it. trouble before they did.
He had Minority Report precogs for a fat guy drowning in a river that was 3 feet deep.
And that's why he knew what was happening with Russia before our own leaders, that he would soon become one of.
God, it would be so... Honestly, I don't really... Hey, listen, everyone, like anyone on Earth, I would love to have a lot of money. Power, not really so much, but I think what I would like, it would be nice to know that every stupid fucking like neurotic thing I do, one day people would rephrase and be like, he was so right about that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that would be awesome. Like,
New Brew is your jelly beans.
Yeah.
You're right. Like, it would just be like, well, the reason he was so smart was because he drank 3 New Brews a day. They gave him a lot of compassion, and they were good for his brain. Like, I would like that. I think honestly, that's probably like the byproduct of being like rich and successful that I want more than anything, is I want to be able to believe that all of my bad habits were in service of like a master plan and narrative that I was, you know, keeping unified until the very end. Not going to happen.
You can tell a lot about a man by the flavor of New Brew he takes.
Yeah.
Guava
I liked,
shows you're determined.
Another thing I liked from his childhood was when his mom made him face his bullies. He was
Yes.
running to the
awesome.
house to go in the front door, and she's just like, no, fuck you. You gotta like deal with this, you little pussy.
You got to face your fears. She like locks the door. She like locks him
Watches
outside.
him get his ass beat from the window. That was so funny. She told him to go fight 3 guys at the same time.
Yeah.
That's what bullies do until you stand up to them. It's time for you to settle this, Dutch. Go on.
Fully of like when it cuts back to her face, just like punch sounds, and like
I wish they were edited with the Kenya Kegel sound effects, so every punch sounded like a wooden board hitting the wall. It didn't matter like how hard it was or like where on the body or anything. I would have liked that. You know, he had according to this movie, like a wholesome but, you know, humble childhood. But yeah, the lifeguarding was the best. They made a point to show, you know, he was very sexy. He was always very sexy.
Yeah.
He was an athlete. I mean, you know,
the greatest man who ever lived.
Basically, I mean, it is, you know, obviously by the time he became president, he was like more advanced in age. But I mean, I think it is kind of hard for us, you know, millennials and, you know, even the Gen Xers too, to conceive of the fact that like he was a really hot guy at one point in pop culture, and that probably like had to do with his appeal.
Yeah, I mean, it's just goes to show you, I feel like a lot of Trump's success and in 2016 Hillary Clinton's failures are the fact that like collective American and hey, I'm just saying the word collective, don't put me on a list. Collective American consciousness is always like 30 years behind the moment that you're actually in.
Right.
Or at like 20 to 30 years. So like for 2016, it feels like majority, like the shared consciousness was stuck in a time when it's like, I hate that bitch, the first lady, Hillary Clinton, and I love this like sexy billionaire playboy, Donald Trump. Like,
yeah, I mean, while he was already like pale and bloated and fish-like, and you know, she was, I mean, you know, listen, she just did by that point just not the first lady.
Yeah.
I mean, can't, you know, argue with that she was, but I agree with you, Julian.
Not that she had her own problems.
Of course.
Where like, you know, people were absolutely right to scrutinize, but it felt like the
including the
general
emails
consensus.
it turned out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like the general public is just like remembers these characters from different points in pop culture.
Yes.
And it feels like that's like part of the buzz that Reagan had becoming governor and then president is just like, oh, I remember seeing his movies when I was growing up and they made me feel good. So yes, I will vote for the movie man. And he was a looker back in the day. That seems to be very important to voters, is that a politician was like a grotesque politician today was at one point like attractive.
Yeah.
I don't know what that deal is. I'm terrified of getting old and having to fuck an old person.
I mean, you could just constantly date 25-year-old women your whole life.
Yeah.
It seems to work for some
But
people.
I watched like The Golden Bachelor, and I'm like, you know, people, they're on this show, and it's like, you know, you're looking at a fucking old ass person, regardless of how old you are. Are you going to look at like an old person and be like, oh,
I'm fucking the
yeah,
hot.
you look great.
I'm fucking the hot guy that this man once was.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, something to think about. A good
Jon
political
Voight.
message we learned from. Yeah. A good political message we
digitally
learned from
de-aged Jon Voight.
You should be able to digitally de-age your partner.
Use the meta glasses to digitally de-age your partner.
Oh, also speaking of just like Reagan appealing to voters, I wrote in my note, really gay scene of people looking up to the television with Reagan on it with respect. Which I remember that part when he was debating like Gerald Ford or whatever.
So much of that.
I guess he was debating Mondale in that scene because that was like the election where he became president, or like
he was the funny president.
Actually, I think that debate was from when he was running the second time. I can't remember who
that
his
was from the
opposition
second
was.
time.
But yeah, he's talking and he's just like, how do you feel now versus 4 years ago? Do you feel safer? And it shows to like a chef working in the kitchen, and he like looks up at the TV and he's like, And it shows like I don't know, some other fucking stupid shit.
Yeah. Oh, when the guy's getting a haircut and the guy fully turns around from his chair to look back at the TV.
Gets his eyeball stabbed by the barber.
It is pretty crazy that Mondale only won one state.
That's pretty wild.
Can you imagine that happening today?
No. They would never let that happen today.
It was the 1984 election.
That's bad for business. You got to keep it as close as possible for as long as possible. That's best for business.
Yeah. And business is good.
Oh, I didn't know Mondale had a female running mate.
Yeah.
Geraldine Ferraro.
I feel like he was kind of not a very inspiring candidate run by the Democrats against a populist, charismatic guy.
Sure.
Unbelievable.
But thankfully they learned their
try
lesson.
something like, yeah, exactly.
He only won Minnesota. He only got 10 electoral votes. It's pretty amazing.
Is that where he's from?
I don't know. Yeah,
Has
it
to
was.
be, yeah.
Oh, he won D.C. as well.
Of course, because they hated Reagan because he was always right about everything. Do you remember the part where they were like, they admitted that some people didn't like Reagan, and it was like the insane montage to the Genesis song, but they also had all these like fake anti-Reagan things. There was one that stuck out to me, and it was a like puppet newscaster talking about Reagan. With the headline was Reagan protects vaccine manufacturers, as though that was like a bad thing. And I was like curious.
Oh, I thought they were showing it as a good thing he did.
Yeah, it was like a thing. My takeaway was like, it was a thing he did that people were upset by. That like modern day people who are seeing this movie would be like, oh, he did some bad things too. Like some things I don't agree with. I was just like really confused by what they were trying to say by making it like a thing that back then people did not like, that Reagan was protecting vaccine manufacturers. But like conservatives did like it then. I didn't understand. It was just total nonsense. And also these horrible fucking like animations of Reagan shooting like lasers out of his eyes and shit. It was so fucking cringe.
Yeah, there was a couple moments in the film where they
no mention of the AIDS crisis. I forget if we already said this.
Barely. They skipped right over it. They were I think it was they showed it right after one of his people working for him was like, they're protesting just to do it, and then Reagan's like, send in the National Guard. And then it's just that some of the protests had to do with AIDS. I noticed some of the just to do it, just protesting to do it. That's what people do.
Yeah.
Send in the National Guard. What was it he said too about college students protesting? Something about like they think they don't have to follow the law when it has to do with social justice or something like that.
I will say that was when he was governor of California, so the AIDS crisis probably would have been later. I think you're conflating two protest scenes.
Things.
But you are right that when he was governor of California, he famously called in the National Guard at Berkeley, I believe, and he said that thing where he was like, they think just because they're protesting they can follow a different law. Send in the National Guard.
What isn't that literally the first part of the Constitution? So you're allowed to. I mean, I'm not saying anything riveting right now, but
no, I don't.
Like, what is the law?
I don't really understand, but he did it. But they also showed, you know what? He was kind of funny with he made the protesters laugh.
They did. He said,
"Shh." Yeah, when they were doing the silent protest, and everybody laughed.
We love you.
I like that it was implied that he had just called in the National Guard on them when he did that. Like it's like in a day you're not a day you won't think this is very funny.
Yeah, probably not.
A cool part of the movie
club to your head.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that was really funny what Mr. Reagan said yesterday.
Yeah, shooting non-lethal munitions into your eyes a day later. A funny part for me personally was right after he got into the White House. They had kind of this like super boring montage, just exactly what you would expect, and with this big climactic music, and that actually timed up perfectly with the basketball game I was actually watching. They were showing this Kevin Durant montage. It was pretty incredible how much it fit the
Reagan
music
of the
since
NBA.
I had the sound turned off on that. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's like the Dark Side of the Moon and Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I was like, man, I wish I could like have saved this somehow. Oh well. But that's the magic of Reagan, you know.
Yeah, the split screen.
Maybe he did make Kevin Durant better. I don't know.
Well, he made us all better, by proxy, and so
yeah.
Durant is feeling the trickle down effects of that.
There would be no professional basketball in a communist country because everybody would get to play basketball.
Right.
Right.
You'd score a basket and both teams would get 2 points.
That's why there's no professional basketball in Russia.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Can you imagine what would that be like if our female athletes had to go play in Russia to support their livelihoods in the off season of the WNBA?
Well, one could argue that Russia is not exactly a communist country anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks to Gorbachev tearing down this wall.
Fucking asshole.
Thank God he teared down the damn wall.
Yeah, should we talk about when he says the line?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
He says, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. All this fucking, like, he's just like a wizard whose, like, magical power is his words, and he can make anybody do anything. It's just so crazy. But, he says, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, and literally everyone goes ape shit. And, like, the communists just wave the white flag. because he said the magic words to defeat communism.
Yeah.
Really funny when they showed Margaret Thatcher going, "Well done, cowboy." It was like fucking crazy. It reminded me kind of the Elon Musk thought experiment of the like having to make a computer say the N word so it won't launch a nuclear strike.
Yeah.
Like they finally figured out the magic word to defeat the USSR, the magic phrase. And they were like, fuck, Reagan said the magic phrase.
We were hoping he would not say that, but he did.
And then we must listen to the crusader.
Yeah, I also like the way they were watching him with intrigue. His team, Nancy, his speechwriter Dana, who I want to talk about in a moment.
Oh yeah,
they were going, "Is he going to say it? Is he going to say it?" And then he whines. Is he going to say the thing that was written on his teleprompter?
Yeah. But it shows you how much faith they had in his fucking Alzheimer's ass at that point.
They're like, he might just not do the plan that we talked about.
Mr. Nancy, bring me some jelly beans.
they're making the throat cutting gesture. Okay. Try that one again, Reagan. Mr. Gorbachev. When he said the line, that was an awesome moment. Honestly, the movie really went downhill from there. They should have just ended it there.
Yeah,
they wanted to give dignity to his like end of life and show that like, he was mortal, and show the sad scene where they told him he wasn't allowed to ride a horse anymore.
Yeah.
But I wanted to jumping around a little bit, but circle back to when he first meets the man who would become his speechwriter, Dana, because it was so weird how they portrayed him. They portrayed him like a hippie kid, but like he loved Reagan. He was like, yeah, right on, man. Reagan's radical. Like it was contrasted with the student protests. Like they were equating him with like the radical Berkeley student protesters.
Yeah.
And like he dressed slovenly and he said like, right on. But like,
do we not see these types of people all the time now though?
Well, now
that
definitely.
They're like Venice Beach hippies who are like diehard Trump supporters.
Right.
With trumpets, honestly, just makes a little more sense. It's just like it's hard for me to get it with like Reagan. You know? I mean, I guess
Trump
they were both
is so like anti-establishment,
right?
That you're almost it's just like a signifier that you don't like politics as usual. With Reagan, it's like he's a fucking like old like guy in a business suit.
Yes,
and, I mean, so is Trump, but I don't know. I don't get it. I also do not get. This guy didn't exist. This guy's not real.
He cannot have existed.
No.
He's like an amalgamation of like 8 different guys, one of whom went to Woodstock.
Right. But later when they bring him to the White House and he shows up wearing like a floral shirt and so scandalizes another member of Reagan's staff that he says like, right on, Mike. And it literally shows like a 15-second reaction clip of this guy going like, oh.
That's how you know you're watching a fucking Christian movie.
Yep.
Because when the humor is like a character's like, sure thing, dude. And the character's like, dude.
Yeah. You're so right. That is probably the most conservative aspect of this entire movie.
And I think it's worth noting too, this really was like a boys' Bible study movie, and it was very Christian, and they repeatedly made a point to make him like a God-fearing believer, even though it didn't even work for the plot.
Yep.
Or matter for the plot.
Well, you see, God told me to sell these weapons to Nicaraguan rebels.
Yeah. When they say our friends in Nicaragua, it's like wasn't it like a Nicaraguan death squad? Whatever.
Yes. It was. That is a crucial part of Reagan's tenure as president that seems to be glossed over. That probably helped a little bit with the defeat of communism in the West was the perpetual assassination of democratically elected socialist leaders in South American countries. But they didn't really want to talk about that.
You can only fit so much in your 2-hour, 20-minute movie.
Oh, I also found out that the original cut of this movie is 3 hours and 40 minutes.
Wow, release it.
Yeah. So maybe that stuff was in the movie. Maybe a lot more nuance was in the
There's another
cut of
hour.
this
There's a
movie.
whole nother feature length worth of Jon Voight, de-aged Jon Voight, like carrying at waxing about the glory of
once
Reagan,
again.
glorious leader, our glorious leader.
We were really hoping he would not do that.
Also, the proxy
Just
wars
keep
in the Middle
saying
East, like funding. They also left out the part where he like funds Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden, gives weapons to Osama bin Laden.
I thought they were good
boys. It's not interesting to anybody.
Well, you see, bin Laden, he picked out all red jelly beans.
I said, this is a powerful guy.
Yeah, you could read the currents.
Yeah. They sort of left out the part where basically every major policy decision he made comes back to bite us in the ass horribly.
Like 20 years.
20 years.
Not even that much later. Yeah.
He's been trickling down on us ever since.
He sure has. But again, as he says earlier in the debate, when everyone's looking at him lovingly on the television, but did we feel better?
We did.
That was the
I
thing.
had a good time watching this movie, so it's hard to argue that I didn't like Reagan as president.
I completely agree. It's hard to argue that Reagan was a bad president at all, because I did really enjoy the movie. He made us feel good. All of us. And that's in order. And so therefore he was a great president.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what the McNamara Reagan 2024 film, with its star-studded like conservative Hollywood cast, that's what they're really trying to say. Because like we sort of said this earlier in the episode, but like that's obviously the function of this movie, right? It's to say like there's no art being made that glorifies and uplifts like conservative heroes.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to make this film to inject a little bit of our vibe back into Hollywood. And Reagan made us feel good.
Beautiful.
Yeah. It did.
It's beautiful. I think on that note, we should rate this.
Let's do it. What do we, the esteemed cabinet of Boys Bible Study, think of Reagan 2024?
I need to give this wonderful American tale 2 out of 2 takes in a meeting with foreign dignitaries. One thing that happened in the movie, and definitely in real life, was that he and some other very important foreign leaders, I can't remember who exactly, are getting into a bit of a heated argument. And he says, you know what? Something I learned in Hollywood. And he walks to the door, turns around, says, take 2, and turns around and goes, hello, Jack. Nice to meet you, or whoever it is. And works like a charm.
I saw a gentle smile. It never left his face. He was disarming. But still he was the zealot that called us an evil empire. And we could not let our guard down.
You know, I used to do a little acting a couple of 100 years ago back in Hollywood. Let me show you how we used to handle this sort of thing. Take 2. Hello, Mikhail. My name's Ron.
So
Warms over the
crazy.
whole room. Incredible.
No wonder fucking the Soviet Union fell. They had a fucking guy in charge who fell for that kind of shit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give this how old was Reagan when he was elected? 71 out of 71 jelly beans, 1 for each year of this young man's life. Crazy to think that is like, I was surprised to see how young he was when he was president, given how old our current president and potentially next president are. It's absolutely crazy to me that
he was considered old at the time.
Yes, he was
right?
considered very old. And
Right.
like people were saying he was senile when he was like elected the first time, which is
Imagine
funny
that.
because there's this montage of all the Soviet prime ministers dying, which is true. A lot of them died in a very short amount of time. And they're all portrayed as being like really unhealthy, drinking vodka and smoking. And at the meantime, they're like saying like, but our president was healthy. He was 100 years old, had Alzheimer's, and ate his weight in jelly beans every day.
All day.
It's like the people who see the fucking guy who eats McDonald's every day, and they're like, and he's perfectly healthy. And it's like, no, he's not. He's just not showing it.
You just can't see the tumors.
Yeah.
Perhaps not.
And this is a good movie for conservatives because there's so many times where he does one thing and it changes the world. And that's like a very conservative brained thing to pretend one thing has ever happened, because that's like the amount of information you can hold in your head at one time. And it's really all that matters. One Reagan to rule them all.
Yeah. May he reign 1,000 years. You know, as for me, I felt that Reagan 2024, like this was like finally a story that didn't just make me feel good, but also made me think. Also, it was an extremely musical movie. By that, I mean it featured 2 songs that I recognized that they probably spent their entire sync budget on. By that, of course, I mean Land of Confusion by Genesis. They also played Wild Thing by the Shags in the 60s. But
By the Shags?
Yeah, that's what. Oh no, I'm sorry. The Shags were the
sisters.
band.
Yeah,
they had what were they called? It's similar to the Shags.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I'm gonna look it up because I need to know my 60s. The Trogs.
The Trogs.
Yeah, the Trogs. I like that band's there. I like 60s music. But yeah, they blew their whole sync budget on those 2 songs. But still, I'm always impressed to see like a mainstream song in a movie, because every movie just uses like stock footage nowadays, stock music. Anyways, I have to give this incredible, thought-provoking, inspirational film about the greatest man to ever do it 525 out of 525 electoral votes in the year 1984, because it is
that's fucking
truly
crazy.
that is some shit where I'd be like, do we live in a dictatorship?
Yeah,
because it's so
very
insane.
concerned.
Like if either Trump or Kamala won every state except for 2, I would be like concerned we were living in a dictatorship.
Yeah,
like it just doesn't make any sense given our current political climate. So
things were different back then.
They sure.
Yep, you could win most everything.
Yeah.
Yep. With the right joke. With the right joke. Hey,
the right joke.
You're a funny guy. With the right joke, you could win every state.
You could be president.
Yeah.
You see now, like Trump tells so many funny jokes, and like
I know
he just has to work so much harder than you know.
It's true. Yeah.
I mean, it is funny because I was just thinking that like that's what fucking Democrats need to walk away with an election, just a funny person.
Yeah, they need
because
someone funny.
Trump is funny. I mean, whether he intends to be or not. And then like the biggest issue he's facing right now is he let somebody else tell a joke.
Right.
It's like, bro, we're not here to see this guy. We're here to see you tell the jokes.
I just thought of something. When is this episode going to be live? Will we have a new president? No.
Thank God.
This will be the last episode before.
This will be the last. This very well could be the last episode.
Well, imagine this too. Let's say Trump wins. What if
it's possible.
Joe Biden takes a stand in January and there's a new January 6th?
Oh my God.
That'd be awesome.
Everybody
gets a January. That's the thing. In communist Russia, everybody would get a January 6th. What were you going to say?
I know for a fact that in some apartment in Soviet Russia, there are 3 men talking about how Boys Bible Study does everything right, and they're so pissed about it. We never thought they would review the Reagan movie. They are making us look like fools. That is what I'm working toward. Thank you very much for listening. And if it's your first time here, check out boysbiblestudy.com to listen to all of our free episodes. If you really like what we do, you want to support, check out patreon.com/boysbiblestudy, where if you pledge $5 a month or more, you get a collective gets full group access to all of the content we make, all equally. It's a sort of political experiment we're doing.
Very dangerous.
Also, special thanks to our patron saints, the $20 tier, Nicole, Marissa, Jeff, Rhett, and Mark. Thank you very much. Also, our outro song is Oh My God by Mary. So from all of us here at Boys Bible Study, myself, Ash, my co-hosts, Scott and Julian, we would like to say, peace be with you.
And also with you.
And also with you.
Dear Mr. President, thank you so much for feeding my fishes, especially since you had all those summit meetings. The fishes die all the time of old age, etc., so it was not at all your fault that one of them died. Thank you very much for those 2 new fishes. They are beautiful. And thank you for the nice letter you left here for me. It was really kind of you to write it. I hope you and Mrs. Reagan have a very happy Christmas. Happy New Year!
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I feel your love in me, it's coming from within. Oh my God! My devotion is so unwavering. Divine emotions when you enter me. Every day